Ladies and gentlemen, today's guest, Melissa Glick. I am so excited to pick your brain.
Yes.
For anybody listening, I had the privilege and the honor of getting to hear Melissa speak at the SBDC conference last week, keynote speaker. But I'm so excited to pick your brain for so many reasons. We had this booked even before then.
Yes.
And I learned more about you through that, which got me even more excited
for
this conversation. Yeah. You can only learn so much Googling somebody, but when you get to actually sit and listen to them. But for anybody listening, Melissa has such the story to tell. And I'm so grateful that you're letting me pick your brain for a little bit. But just to paint a little bit of a picture and tee it up, multi-million-dollar tech industry exit, entrepreneur, successful entrepreneur. You've had this amazing journey that I hope we're going to talk about a little bit, where you've lost 100 pounds and just this amazing kind of perspective and context on life. And so now, since then, you've founded Peak CEO, and you're a business consultant, a business coach, a keynote speaker, a community leader, all of these things. And it's just so cool. I'm so honored to be sitting across the table from you, because when somebody has, the resume and the story to tell that you do, it's usually worth listening.
Well, thank you. It sounds good when somebody else says it. And sometimes I forget that I've done a lot of stuff. But the crazy thing is I just feel like I'm starting now.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And I want to hear about that. Before we do, can you, one thing I haven't, part of your story I haven't been able to hear is, because I'm familiar with, should we say the company by name? Just your IT company.
Think. Network
Okay. I didn't know if there was anything with the exit, but, I was obviously familiar with that brand and the business, and I'm familiar with your departure and now IT voice here in Durango. I want to hear before that, though. What made you? I want to hear the early days of when you started Think, and paint that picture for me.
So I didn't actually start it.
Good to know.
My business partner was my brother, and he started it. So he's really the true entrepreneur. He went to Fort Lewis. And when he graduated, he moved away. And my father, who is a second or third generation entrepreneur, said to him, if you get a skill and you come back to Durango someday, I will help you start a business. And he did. He went and he learned all about IT, and he became really excited about it and passionate about it. Came back to Durango because this is where he wanted to live. This is where he wanted to have a family, and saw a need for bringing world-class technology to rural Southwest Colorado. So he and my father started the business.
Wow. So it's a true family.
True family business. Yes. And here I am in Chicago. I'm a saleswoman, a marketing expert. And in about 2008, I came back to Durango after having been gone for a long time, and decided that I wanted to kind of restart my life. I had some health concerns that I needed to take care of, which is a whole other podcast. I mean, I don't even know
episode on that.
What you wanted me to get into, because there are so many different tangents here. But while I was here, I started kind of just peeking my nose around the company, Think, and I thought, they don't really have any sales expertise here. They don't really have any operations. I mean, it was a startup, and my father was kind of leading the financial side of things, but this was my brother's baby. He's the engineer. He was the technologist. And so there were all these big gaps: marketing, sales, operations. There was no training. There was just none of that, all the stuff that I knew. And I sat at the reception desk and I answered phones because I was like, I'm going to help my brother. This is his company and I want to help where I can. And so that's what I did. I was the receptionist. I sent out packages. I answered the phone. I collected late payments from customers. And through doing that, I learned the entire business, everything. I Saw all the different skilled engineers and kind of what their different areas of expertise were and what the gaps were. I saw a sales process that I thought needed to be developed. I saw marketing that I thought needed to be developed. There was no formal training. There was no HR. There was nothing. And so I started just to make recommendations here or there, learned the business from the bottom up,
right,
and kind of became this invaluable person to my brother. And I think that lasted for several years. And I never intended to have that be my job. I mean, I worked for my brother.
Right.
He was my boss. And I remember I would come in at 9 whenever I wanted, because I'm like, well, I could do whatever I want. And at some point he said to me, if you're going to do this, you got to follow the rules just like everybody else.
Sure.
And that's when I was like, you know what, this can become serious for me, because I saw a ton of potential and I saw the ability to really grow this business. And then I started to get excited about it, because I didn't know anything about technology. I didn't have a passion about it. And then we decided to become business partners.
Wow.
And that's when I moved into the CEO role, and I bought into the company, and we were 50-50 partners. And he headed up everything regarding technology, and I headed up everything regarding business, financial, sales, marketing, and we were partners. That's really how the whole thing started. Yeah.
So that was, when did he start it? You joined in 08-ish.
I joined in 08, and it was maybe 4 years.
Okay. And then exit happened in 2022.
Yes.
Talk me through growth, just percentages, big picture. I'd love to hear how the business evolved from 08 to 2022.
Yeah. So the last 5 years, I would say we were, maybe 6 or 7 years, somewhere around that range, we were seeing 25 to 30% growth year over year.
Wow.
And probably 7 years before the sale, we said we need to put together an exit strategy.
Start actually planning for that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I touched on this in the keynote, is when you're building a company, you don't always think about an exit strategy, because you're thinking, well, no, we got to build. But I think an exit strategy helps you plan for that path for how you're going to build. And we knew that in order to grow and to be attractive to really anyone who would be interested in a company like this, we needed to focus on certain areas of the business. And so that is what we did. We focused on long-term contracts. We focused on diversified revenue streams. We focused on monthly reoccurring revenue. Those are all the things that people want. And in terms of a company's value, it's the multiples based on those things.
Yeah. Wow. So I just think it's so cool because, obviously there was some intentionality behind that, 7 years prior or whenever it was. But in 08, you had no idea. No. And kind of just jumping into it, looking back now, what are your thoughts when you think about that chapter of your life, that journey? I mean, I would just love to hear what it's like now to look back and sort of reminisce on how that went and what your feelings are from starting in 08 to how it ended and just kind of reflecting on it.
So I think about this all the time because everything I've done, so I've always been a high achiever, and when I've committed to something, like some career choice, I've gone all in on that, and I've always done very well. But when I look back at everything that I've done, and it's been in various industries, like I started out in marketing and then transitioned into sales. I worked in commercial real estate. It was very male dominated. Then I went into technology. It was very male dominated. And so being a woman in those fields, I've always kind of had to just really rely on my persistence and competitive nature. And so when I look back at my career, everything that I have done has been a huge part of what has set me up for that next thing, whether it was skills that I learned or people that I was introduced to, what I'd learned, it always kind of built on top of each other. So everything that I learned in marketing and operations and sales gave me the foundation that I needed in order to be able to apply all of that to this business. I mean, that was the first time that I was an owner of a business.
Right.
And when you're an owner of a business, you wear a lot of different hats.
You're telling me.
Right. And so, but I had that foundation because I had all of that, those skills transferred into that. And what's really interesting now is I'm in the same position. So now I'm wearing a different hat where I'm coaching and I'm consulting, and it's all based on everything that I've done up until now. And so it's just every step that I have taken has led me to the next thing, and everything that I've done has been better than what's come before it.
Wow. Yeah.
And so that's what I meant when I said, like, I feel like I'm just getting started.
Right.
Because what's coming next, I'm really excited for.
And I think, so that sort of mindset, that kind of passion that you bring is so cool. And part of why I've been so excited to be able to pick your brain.
Yeah.
The idea of, and I don't know how old you are. It doesn't matter. I'm not asking.
I'm
not asking.
Well, I'm going to tell you because I've never been so vocal about my age before, but I turned 50 this year.
Wow.
And I'm like making announcements about it.
I'm
everywhere.
glad. I'm actually glad you answered, because I would have assumed you were younger. So that's a compliment and a sincere
you.
one. But it also drives the point even harder home. To be 50 and say I'm just getting started is remarkable. Why? Tell me more about that.
Yeah.
Where does this come from? This like energy of true, and because I can tell you mean it.
Yeah.
That you really feel. And, and to just provide a little more context, why I'm so interested in that is, you look at your story, and by all counts, you did it. And people would say, I'm going to hang my hat up, I'm going to put my feet up, or whatever. And you worked your tail off. You've let all these things build up to building the thing that you built, and successful exit. I mean, you checked literally every box.
Yeah.
And now here we are starting a new venture, doing the keynote speaking and the consulting and all of that. And at 50, saying, I'm just getting started.
Yeah.
Help me understand that.
Okay. So this gets kind of deep, but I wasn't living my best life for a long time. So while I can't even remember a time when I wasn't kind of relying on my very competitive drive to find fulfillment. It's been like that for so long. I mean, at least 25 years that has been what has been driving me. And so I feel like I have lost some time. And if you ask me what the most valuable thing that I have is today, it's not real estate or money in the bank or anything. It's time. So I feel like I'm just getting started because it's like I've got time and I want to make the most of whatever time I have left. I want to do it in a different way than I've ever done it before. And I also feel better. I feel healthier. I feel more excited. I feel like I've found things in my life in the last couple of years that I didn't even know I loved. And that just makes me so much happier than I've really ever been. And that can't be a bad thing. So however successful I've been and anything that I've done so far has been kind of despite the fact that I kind of almost felt this emptiness. And so now that I don't, and now that I feel it more full, oh my God, like what can come next? I'm just so excited for that.
I love that.
Yeah.
What's different? Why, you mentioned 20 years or so of somewhat of feeling empty or losing time or whatever it might be. And now there's this fulfillment and this energy and this excitement. What's the difference?
So this is the deep part of the conversation. From the time I was very young, I just felt like I wasn't good enough. I heard messaging when I was younger that, you're not good this way. You need to change and be this way. And I heard it from a lot of different people. And so that just caused me to feel like in this body, the way that I look, the way that I am, it's not good enough. And so in order for me to feel any sense of goodness, I had to find another way to do it. And the way that I found that was through achievement. So I was always very good at school. I, was straight A's, National Honor Society, AP. I mean, that's what I did. I was the smart kid. I was the good girl. And I have been that person this whole time. And it then transitioned into my career, and then into a business owner, and then to a leader in the community who started a nonprofit and was on many boards. And that's just what it's always been. And so in the last, 3 or 4 years, I've done a lot of work on being enough. And so I finally feel like that work has come to a point where I believe it.
And do you think that that's independent from the success? Or do you think that because knowing that background of, I don't know, I'll call it sort of hanging your self-worth on achievements, which I relate with more than you know, to now finding self-worth elsewhere. My curiosity is if it's, because if you reach that level where the success finally actually stuck from a self-worth perspective, or did you change the way you measure it, your perspective on self-worth? Help me understand that difference.
So I can give you an example of how it plays out. So I was retired for 33 days before I started my next company, which is Peak CEO. And that does not surprise anybody. Right? Of course, she was retired for 33 days. And I was inspired to start this new business and this new career path based on an event that I was invited to as a mentor and advisor. And I went there, and all these people were like, oh my God, Melissa, you can help me. And I was like, oh my God, this is what I want to do next. Boom, I started a new company. And the difference between the way that I approach it now versus the way that I probably would have approached it 4, 5, 6 years ago is it's just slower. I don't need to scale a business. I don't need to blow it up. I don't need to I'm not measuring my success by the dollars in my bank account. It's just, how do I feel? So this is the order in which I care about things now. Does it make me better? Does it make me happy? Does it make me money?
In that order.
In that order. Yeah. It's never been like that before.
Right.
It's always been, does it make me money first?
Right.
And then I don't even know if I cared about the other two.
Right.
Yeah.
Let the other sacrifice even. Or
I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm happy. I'll go have some, dinner with my friends, or I'll go on a vacation, but that's not happiness. And better, I mean, that's a beast. I have to be working on me being better every single day. And I've just never been in this place before.
Yeah. I recently learned that dopamine, the happy chemical of dopamine, actually gets released in pursuit of goals, not in the accomplishment of them. And it made so much sense to me. Like I think back to my life when I'm at my happiest, and it's when I'm pursuing something meaningful or whatever.
Purposeful.
Yeah. I'm similar. I would be probably retired for 32 days. I relate to that so much. But I also think it's so interesting to hear that perspective from you, because at the end of the day, and this is, just the world according to Ben, but I feel like everybody's out there trying to find happiness, trying to find fulfillment, or at least that's, most of us and what I want for people too. And it's so interesting to hear when you found it and how, looking at that story. Yeah. I would have thought, the heydays of Think, or, when the check cashed, or, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
It's so
Because I always wanted more. It didn't matter if the check cashed. It didn't matter if I got the customer.
What's next?
It's what was coming next. At this point, I'm just like, balance. I just want balance. And so people will say to me, you know, the devil's advocate will say, well, you have
the luxury of that. Yeah.
You have the luxury of doing that now because you've had all this other success. And that might be true. I'm not going to deny it. You know, I definitely have a little parachute and some breathing room. But if you talk to people who have sold a business, it's very common for them to feel lost afterwards.
Yeah. I mean, we're nowhere near that here, but it's my identity.
It's your identity.
I can't imagine not being a cent digital.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that would look like.
Yeah.
So then knowing that, I'm curious, because you had also touched on this idea of sort of a feeling of lost time. Mm-hmm. If you were to do it over again, would you do anything differently?
Yes.
What? And why?
Yeah. So one of my key personality traits is that I feel like I can do it better than anybody else. I don't need help. You know, I have for a long time been the most successful person that is in my circle. And I just I think I hit a ceiling where I just thought, this is my burden to bear. I got to solve these problems on my own.
No one understands.
No one understands. Nobody can get it. And so I grinded that way for a long time. And what I do now, I wish I would have had me 8 years ago. I didn't have that person. I mean, I had mentors in my life, one of which is my dad. You know, he's been an entrepreneur forever. We're an entrepreneurial family, and I know about business from him, but that's different than having a growth coach. And I never had that. And I can't even imagine what would have happened with our business if I had pursued something like that.
Do you think that it could, because it could have made the business bigger, or because it would have given you balance, or a combination of both?
I can't even imagine. Yeah. I mean, it could have been that it scaled in a much bigger, different way. It could have been that I decided much earlier that I needed to be out. We could have, brought on a CEO and a CTO and left the company, and it still owned it. Like so many different
all these other paths,
things could have happened. I'll never know.
Is that why you started Peak? The kind of this idea of like, I don't know, that you had some realizations of finding these other fulfillments and the benefit of hindsight and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, the knowledge that I have, having built a business, having sold a business, having gone through a profound transformation in my life, shouldn't just stop with me. You know, I can share that with people. I just have to find the people to share it with. You know, the people who are Melissa 8 years ago, or Ben,
all of the Chasing Greatness podcast listeners. You know? I'm kidding.
It's just people who. I think our personality type, it's just so common to not think you need help.
Yeah.
And I think everybody needs help.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, now that I'm in this world of personal growth and development, nobody's really immune, I don't think, from getting help.
Yeah.
We can't do it on our own.
No.
We really can't. It's so impossible to see your blind spots. It really is. And even if, you are working with somebody, and you probably mentor a lot of people, you can give the advice, but you can't do it for yourself unless somebody else from the outside tells you to do it. It's just this weird phenomenon.
I literally tell my team, do as I say, not as I do. Like, I force them to take time off. I make them find balance. I make them set boundaries and all that. And then here I am just, and I say, well, do as I say, not as I do, which I know is, we laugh, but we all need help.
Yes, yes.
Because I need somebody else to tell me, hey.
You do. I mean, it's just like nobody's exempt from having somebody remove those blocks, because we all have them, and you just have to want to grow past it, because it's not comfortable.
Yeah,
it's just not. It's not
right.
comfortable.
Yeah. No, it's not. You shared a story that I think is a powerful one, and I would love for you to re-share it during your keynote last week. The pandemic, working from home, and sort of the physical transformation that you embarked on. And I would love to hear it, because it's going to lead to a couple follow-up questions that I have. And I also think it's important, and just for whatever it's worth, everybody listening, even somebody like Melissa, who's sitting here with, obviously it hasn't been a perfect road to get where you are. And I think that matters, that people see that you struggled too, and that, and you overcame, and we all do. And I think the priority for me is the triumph afterwards, and and seeing this other side of it is so cool. But we don't appreciate that unless we know, where we come from. Yeah.
Yeah. So I heard something. So I heard something today that stuck out at me, and it's that struggle isn't failure.
Have you ever read the book The Gift of Struggle?
No.
It's by Bobby Herrera.
Okay.
And I'll get you a copy. It's an amazing book. He was a CEO, successful exit, this whole thing. But the whole concept of the book is how valuable struggle is.
Yeah.
And the hard times, and how it forges us into these people. It's a great read. It's actually a pretty easy read too. I read it on on an airplane in one sitting. I'll get you a copy of it. Okay. But anyway, struggling is a gift.
Struggling is a gift. Yeah. And I write a lot. I post a lot of content. My main platform is LinkedIn, and I write about my failures. And this one you just asked me about is a big one. But when I heard that today, I was like, maybe I need to reframe that. Maybe it wasn't so much a failure, but just a struggle.
Which you overcame.
Which I overcame, yeah. So, God, this story. Every time I say this story, it gives me the gut punch. So it's COVID, March of 2020, and we shut down because we were a tech company. We just all go remote right away. And I thought my job at the time was to lead my company through crazy times. And I don't have children, and so I felt like I had less struggle to deal with at home that everyone else, particularly most of my employees, had families. And so it was just like, what am I going to do with the kids? How am I going to manage this? Is my partner's job going to be secure? It was just, everyone was so freaked out. And I was like, our business is a tech business. It's not going anywhere. I want to make sure that my employees feel like they're safe, and it's just business as normal, and I got to lead my team through this and be this strong, stable force for the company. And so that's what I did. And it just happened to coincide with me being the worst I have ever been in my whole life, mentally and physically. I was just not okay, and so I would pretend to be this really strong, confident, sure, stable CEO, and then just completely a basket case when I'm by myself. And I was 100 pounds heavier, I was depressed, and I was completely burned out. And so I'd come, downstairs at the end of the day and just not even know how to make myself feel better. And so I got into something that people in this situation get into, which is sometimes drugs, sometimes alcohol. And for me, it was unhealthy eating. And so I would just, make really unhealthy eating choices, and I would sit in front of the TV and just numb out. And then I was watching the news, and it's just COVID deaths. And it was scary. And I'm watching as, it's people can't get into the hospitals. They can't get treatment. They are stuck at home and they're dying, and the body bags in the hospital. Do you remember?
Oh, I remember.
The images of the body bags, and then the people on the gurneys, and then healthy people are dying. And then the people who are most at risk are people who have the following. They struggle with obesity. They have sleep apnea. They have diabetes. They have high blood pressure. And the list goes on. And I had all of it at that point. I was just so unhealthy. I was on medications for all of it. And I was like, oh my God, I'm the poster child of the person who dies of COVID. And forever, I just thought, I'm going to take care of this problem eventually. I'm going to get that motivation. I'm going to go on a diet. I'm going to start my exercise tomorrow.
Someday.
Someday. And then I would wake up and I would just start the unhealthy habits over and over and over again. But this time it was like death knocking at my door. And so I didn't leave the house. I was just so terrified of dying, and because I didn't want to die. Didn't want to die like that. Alone and completely embarrassed and ashamed that I'd let that happen to me. And so that was that pivotal moment for me where I was like, I have to do something, get myself out of this situation, and I have to do it right now. I cannot wait till I wake up in the morning. It's got
tomorrow.
To be right now. And so that is what kind of sparked my, taking ownership of where I was at and changing my circumstance. And it was walking. That's how I started it, was just walking.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And what I think is unique about it is that came from you. Mm-hmm. Like you had somehow, because I always think it's one thing to see a high performer continue to perform high. Mm-hmm. It's another thing to see somebody in a low or in a dark place pull themselves out of it. Mm-hmm. So I want to hear more about that. Like, did you? I mean, was it a discipline thing? Was it was fear the driving factor? I mean, I just think it's so. Yeah. I think it's so powerful and remarkable that you alone. Mm-hmm. I mean, we were literally isolated. Mm-hmm. Said, I'm going to start walking because. It could have gone the other direction just as easily, but you made a choice. And I'd love to walk me back to that moment of that choice and the mindset behind it.
So I think what you just said is it. It was fear. I was terrified. So if you talk to any of my friends who thought I was completely nuts when COVID first happened, I was the person that was like, you can come over, but you have to sit outside. You can't come and use my bathroom. Like, I was just completely over the top paranoid about COVID, but I didn't tell them why. And it's because I'm like the person that dies of COVID. And so everyone just thought I was this, paranoid person who's, they still kind of tease me about it today. And I feel like they might not have heard the reasons why or asked me why.
Right.
But this is why. It was because I thought I was going to die for legitimate reasons. And so fear is what I think started it.
Yeah.
And so when I started to look back on my journey is when I started realizing all the things that I did that now we know are discipline and consistency and habits and goal setting and all these things, which back then I didn't have the foresight to understand what I was doing.
Intuitively?
Yes. Yeah. It was, I think it was a gift that I have been given as somebody who thinks this way, which is why I've been able to do what I've been able to do in other areas of my life. It comes down to these things, and I didn't even know that that's what I was doing. But now looking back, I can say this is exactly what I was doing. And now it's almost like I can reverse engineer it so that now I can help other people do what I'm doing in language that they understand.
Yeah, which is so cool. And now there's no fear, right? So now there's different motivating forces. And, we touched on it a little bit earlier, but for you to be across the table from me saying that you're just getting started, I just think that transition is super powerful.
Yeah.
Going from whether it's a fear-based change or a rock bottom, so to speak, or whatever it might be, but now to continue the progression and continue the growth for different reasons is really cool. And so tell me more about that, because and there's something that you touched on in your presentation that I wrote down, but it's basically, you called it the foundations to achieving the highest value. And there's the different pillars or the things that contribute to that, which I would love to talk about a little bit if you didn't mind. Values, goals, habit, and mindset. And the reason is because you touched on, those things through this journey of yours, and knowing that you were doing some of it intuitively now. I would love for people to hear how those things contribute to those foundations to achieve the highest value, as you put it, because it's so powerful. It's to your point, in words that people like me can understand, which is great, by the way. But do you mind walking me through those?
Oh my God, did that sound really bad?
No. It's actually very true. I relate to actually what you said from your perspective. To be totally candid, I have been blessed with a mindset that has a growth. I have an ability to retain information. I can read a book and turn it into action. And sometimes it will cause frustration for me, because I'll be like, why did nobody, you read the same book, why aren't you doing this thing that it taught us, or, this thing or whatever. And a lot of it, honestly, is because I think I've been lucky enough to get it in a different way. But then when you hear it with other verbiage or other words or other kind of action plans, it clicks better. And so I'm joking, but very seriously, it's a unique, and the way that you are able to describe it is also very powerful too. And I think that's probably why you've seen the success you've seen with Peak, is that we actually do need to hear it in other ways. So no, all that to say that no, you did not come across as
well. So what I have been working on for the last year is to translate what's in my brain into words.
Yeah, which is hard to do.
It's really hard to do, which is why the very first podcast that I ever did was clunky, because here I am being asked questions very similar to the questions that you're asking me now, but I hadn't had a chance to process the information yet. And I think, and I always say, and I make fun of myself, that I talk to myself all the time, because this is how I process information. I process it by writing, doing, and speaking. And so getting all the information out of my brain, out of my body that I naturally know how to do, and most people don't. So that's what I've been working on for the last year, is getting it out.
Which, and I'm midway through a book right now called Hidden Genius. And last night, one of my takeaways from the chapter, it was about building mental toughness, but it was that we're supposed to talk to ourselves more and listen to ourselves less. So kind of interesting. So good to, and now, you've had these chances to kind of articulate it and put it to paper and turn it into a presentation and, all of those things, which is unique. So talk to me about that. Values, goals, habits and mindset.
I'm just like regurgitating my whole keynote here. So I think those are the foundational elements to be able to operate at peak performance. And so it starts with values, which we think we know what our values are. Everybody's like, I know what my values are. And then when I start probing and I find out that these are values that they've had since they were little, because they were their parents' values, or their values that they think are supposed to mean something to them because what society tells us are supposed to be our values, or our partner tells us. So I'm talking about intentional values, which are not just words, but they are the actions that we are taking in order to live our lives. So when you say, my value is to be healthy, to live a healthy life, then it's what are the actions that you are taking to be in alignment with that. So that's what I mean by values. And an example that I can give is when you are not living in alignment with your values, it can feel like there's tension. And what I like to describe it as feeling like you're wearing clothes that are too tight. It's uncomfortable. It doesn't feel right. You just can't wait to rip them off and just something isn't right. And if you feel that kind of tension, which a lot of people feel, then if you go back and, start to do an audit of your values, then a lot of those questions and a lot of that feeling you can get some resolution there. So values, I think you start with values, and then it really kind of goes right along with goals, which are, your purpose and your path. And so goals really. Okay, so I'll go into my trifecta. Do you remember what I talked about? My be, do, have trifecta.
I remember the concept. Okay. I don't remember it exactly.
So this is just the fast version of my explanation of values and goals. So when you have something that you want, you have to be able to sacrifice something in order to get that. And if you aren't willing to sacrifice something to get that thing that you want, then usually the thing that you want ends up being the thing that's sacrificed. So when you want something, and I'll use the example of health because we keep talking about that. So if you want something like, I want a healthy lifestyle, then you have to do things that are going to get you that healthy lifestyle. So this kind of goes into habits and taking action. You can't just sit there and say, I want this thing in my life. I want this vision board and put it in my closet and manifest all these wonderful things.
You can't just manifest it?
No, you have to actually do things in order to get what you want. But it's not just the doing. You have to be the person that does the things in order to get what you want. And so I like to call this the be, do, have trifecta. It's a reverse engineer of goals. So you want that healthy lifestyle, you have to do things that a person who lives a healthy lifestyle does, like eating well, taking care of your body, taking time for self-care, like setting boundaries, like all the things that a person who has a healthy life does. You have to do those things. And in order to do those things, you have to be a person that does those things. Yeah. You have to be a person who values those things over all other things. So that's that be, do, have trifecta that I think is really a good way to lump together values and goals.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Be, do, have. And it makes so much sense. It's like you choose that you're going to be that person before you are.
Yes.
It's almost like, I don't know, it's kind of like manifesting but with action behind it. Like identifying as something even if you're not there yet. Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So tell me about, because, from putting on your peak hat, I saw some insight that I'd love to hear more about, but there's sort of this, I'm going to butcher it, so I apologize, but it's basically like I believe a 45-day transformation specifically for women. And early on, you had touched on, some of the realities of you being a female in these male-dominated industries, which I would imagine has brought you, some unique perspectives and tools and things like that. But tell me a little bit about that from the female perspective and female transformation. My business partner is female. My life partner obviously is female. I'm surrounded by incredibly strong, successful women. But there's also a class of people that I hold in kind of the, highest regards, and working moms and working females. I mean, all of that stuff. It's I just think it's interesting. So I'd love to hear, especially why specifically, the for women specifically, and where you felt the need was there.
Yeah. So I think there's a a group of us, high achieving women who have certain qualities about ourselves that are very masculine. So these are things like competitiveness, just wanting to achieve, wanting to make a big impact, going. I have something I like to call beast mode Betty.
I love it.
She's my beast mode, and she's been with me for a long time, and she's gotten me where I think she's been a huge part of how I've gotten to where I've gotten.
It's interesting. That book I mentioned, Hidden Genius, that I'm reading right now, also in yesterday's chapter, there was a whole narrative on how valuable an alter ego is.
Yeah.
So anyway, your beast mode.
Betty.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's my strength, and she is also my weakness. She can kill me. She can take me down. In fact, just last week, I had to move because I spend half my year in Phoenix and then half my year here in Durango. And so I had my move back to Durango in combination with my keynote, and then I have some real estate properties. And so it was just like I was boom, 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 boom for almost an entire week. And it was Beast Mode Betty that was there, and she was guiding me, and she was making me get all of that stuff done and at high performance. And then afterwards, I was just a complete zombie, and I crashed, and I knew that that's what my body needed. But I think that there's women who they have this beast mode, and it's high achieving women. And in order to be successful, we really rely on those characteristics of ourselves, and we haven't nurtured the more feminine side, the part of ourselves that is almost, brings us the things that I was missing for so long, which is fulfillment and joy and, intimate relationships and, deep connections and just all these things that I feel like I was missing. For a long time, I felt like I was the only person in the world who was feeling like this.
Yeah.
But as I now know, there's a whole group of women who do feel like this. And so that's why I put this program together called 45 to Fulfillment for women, which is 45 days to learn basically these elements that we're talking about here. And it's not just learning them, but it's practicing them, because there's no lack of information. We all have the information. It's how do I implement this? How do I make this work for me? And so that's what that program is that you were talking about.
And is that, kind of, we were talking earlier about, your story and kind of these, lost time and, some years there that were difficult.
Yeah.
Because now we feel like there's a way to have balance there. If we nurture these other parts of us, that you can still have the success, but still have fulfillment. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, without these foundational elements like values, goals, habits, and mindset, sure, you can build an empire on top of those things, but it will crumble. And if you develop the solid foundation from which to be able to carry those responsibilities, then you can build infinitely on top of that. And so you don't have to give it up. It's not you can have this or you can have this, meaning you can have the balance, the fulfillment, the joy, and the love of life, or you can have the success. You can have both, but there is a way to build it that way, and you have to go back to the basics.
And the idea being that if you go back to the basics and you have the balance, making sure I heard you correctly, that you can actually build more.
Yes.
Why?
I think that your ceiling is your sense of worth. So most of the time, it comes down to a feeling that there's not worth. Why do we have this need to have so much success? Why do we always want more? Because however much we get, there's what's next. And it's a certain type of person who feels this way. And once you can figure out that it doesn't matter how much stuff that you get, you're always going to feel like you need more. Once you can feel like you've got what you need just within you, then that's where the glass ceiling blows open.
And it makes for more productive lives even too, or more fulfilling?
Everything. I think you can, it's a way to blow past your blocks personally and professionally.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do relate to that in the sense that like I have to take care of myself in order to, continue to produce and be a high performer and things like that.
Yeah.
I've often struggled with, and I'll be very open about it. I tell my wife all the time, even like, man, I wish I wanted less.
Yeah.
Like there's times when we'll be sitting at the house and, I'm sitting in the hot tub in the backyard and I'm enjoying the beautiful view and my amazing kids are asleep. I mean, I have it all. Yeah. And I'm like sitting here thinking, I got to keep going. I got to get that other thing or whatever. And that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
And recently, and this has been probably the last year for me, I've been working on balance and, setting some boundaries at work and making sure that I can sustain this. Yeah. And the feeling it has, and, similar, I'm not able to articulate it the way you are. I'm working on it myself. It's like, I don't know, I feel joyful. I feel light. Like the other day, my wife and I, we were just talking about how freaking good we have it. And our marriage is better than it's ever been. Our kids are great. The businesses are doing well. It's like, let's enjoy the heck out of this and figure out. And so one of the things we've started doing is we call it Trail Tuesdays. And we pay a babysitter to go on runs together. And it's these little like things that would have felt really weird for me even a year ago.
Yeah.
Like I should be working. I should be making those calls. I never would have imagined I could turn off my notifications to go on a run with my wife, Yeah. So I relate to it so much, but it's so counterintuitive on paper.
Yeah.
Those high performing personalities, the instinct is to just grind. Yeah. And then you kind of,
so I think that, this is another reason why I have this program for women, because that grind, I think it's more male versus female. And I think being able to slow down a little bit offers so much perspective and insights now. And there's so many gurus right now. And then I like to call them the bros.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I didn't come up with that term. Somebody else did. But it's just this like hustle culture, grind. And that doesn't work for women.
Right.
It just doesn't. Like there's going to be burnout. And I fight with people online about that it also doesn't work for men.
Yeah.
But that's not my fight right now.
Right.
My fight is that I see another way for women, and it's to slow down. I also can compare it to the difference between being a business operator and a business owner, right? Like a business operator is in there, they're doing the work all the time, they're wearing all the different hats, but a business owner has figured out how to put systems in place so that they don't have to be doing that in their business all the time, and they can be working on the bigger picture. They can be working on the strategy. They can be working on the vision. It's the working for your business versus or working on
in
your
it
business
versus on it, yeah.
Versus in it. And so, like, we sometimes have to take a step back and slow down in order to make a step forward. So, in my walking, I get all of my genius ideas when I'm walking.
Yeah.
I mean, so much clarity through just slowing down. And that's actually work,
Right.
That's actually a different kind of work.
100%. Yeah. Do you have how many problems I've solved on runs?
Yeah. Yeah.
Endless.
Yeah.
Major life decisions.
You don't have to be sitting at a desk behind a computer in order to be working. You don't have to be, doing the skill. You can be using your brain in other ways, especially if you're a peak performer. Like you kind of have to.
Right. So do you think if you had the tools you have now, And maybe not even that, but that you could have gotten to where you are with balance. Like, do you think there's a world that exists where, because I think, and I'm just speaking for, from myself, but for anybody listening too, which is a lot of, motivated, high performing individuals that are, we're trying to get to success, that you could have achieved the level of success you've achieved with balance. Do you think that would have been possible?
So this is my podcast, but I had a business partner who was my brother, who had a completely different experience in being a business owner, an entrepreneur, and building a business and having that same success. His experience was very different than mine. I would have to say that he had a lot of those skills ingrained in him, and he handled it a lot differently than I did. So, and I don't want to tell his story, but he didn't have the same problems I had at all.
It's so interesting. I relate to that, and I envy my business partner often at her ability to set boundaries and find balance and things like that. It's something I'm actively working on. Yeah. Of course, it begs the question, because you had both of you, we have both of us in my partnership right now. If both found that, if the success could still happen, if it would happen at a lesser level, or if it would happen at a greater level, and who knows, but actually, and maybe the way to think about that would be is reframing success anyway. Because to your point earlier, who cares how big the check is? Who cares how big the account is? Are we happy?
Yeah.
Are we feeling fulfilled?
Yeah.
So maybe it would change even the definition of success anyway.
So this is a whole other podcast too, partnerships. But our partnership changed when I changed, because I became a different business partner when I started this big transformation, where instead, we were on the same page like we had never been before. And
it improved your partnership?
Improved our partnership.
I was thinking you were going the other direction.
No, it improved our partnership. And I'm so grateful that everything kind of happened the way that it happened in the time that it happened, because going through an exit, had we not been tight, that would have been even harder than, that was a really hard thing to do.
Yeah.
But thankfully we were on the same page. We supported each other. There was lots of crazy stuff that happened, and we had each other's back, and man, am I grateful for that.
Yeah.
But I don't know that had I not been that version of me, that's how it would have gone.
Right. Yeah, no, it's interesting, and it's so cool to hear that it evolved it in a positive way. I see glimpses of that, for sure, because it's something I'm actively working on, is finding more balance and bringing that in so I can sustain it forever. Yeah. And when I do, I'm in a better space mentally, which makes me a better partner and a better husband and a better dad and a better friend. You name it, down the line. Yeah. So it's cool it's refreshing to hear that. Yeah. That was the impact on the partnership, not the opposite. I was for some reason thinking that you have this grind nonstop person and this other person with great balance, and that's kind of how you moved it forward. And then if you would have stopped, that it would have changed. But to hear the opposite that's very encouraging, to be candid.
Yeah. It wasn't one person grinding and one person with balance. We just had different ways of operating. Yeah. However important I was to the business, he was just as important, just in a different way. And so his work style was different than my work style. And
it's probably why you were good partners. That's why my partnership is as good as it is because we're so different, which also makes it very hard. But that's also you're striking all the, you talk about different work styles or work environments, and it's so funny because I had a moment of clarity a while back when I'm like, there's sort of this tug of war of, I do this or you do that, or, be more like this. And I realized why do the last thing I would want is for her to be like me anyway, because then we'd have two of me, and that would be a huge problem.
I know.
And the whole point is that we're partners for a reason, because of that balance, because of how we complement one another.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's so funny.
It's so interesting. I mean, it's definitely like you're in your lane, I'm in my lane. We are so different. But this is what I say about people with partners is the highs are higher and the lows are less low.
Yeah, it kind of raises the threshold, the kind of baseline.
Because business is a lonely place to be. So when you have a partner, it's just not quite as lonely. But then when you have something to celebrate.
You have someone to celebrate with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, but this does not mean that you should just go grab a partner.
No,
with anyone.
partner. We'll have a follow-up podcast all on partnerships. I'll bring my partner in on it even. No, I'm kidding. But yeah. I mean, even today, I was stuck on a major decision, and I just am like, what would you do?
Yeah.
You let me know, and she made a decision. I'm like, thank you. I couldn't decide. I was stuck in between. Needed just literally tiebreaker vote type of thing. And so there's nothing better. So you talked about just getting started.
Okay.
I want to hear where you're headed. I want to hear what's next. I want to hear your goals with Peak. I want to see when your eyes are to the horizon. What are you looking at?
So, there's three things. Well, I mentioned that is it making me better? Is it fun? And does it make me money? And that's
in that
the order. Yeah. But then there's also three more things. So I want to make an impact. I want to be significant. And I need to, live. I need financial security. So it's really those three things that's kind of driving what I'm doing. And so what that looks like is to continue to do coaching and working with people one-on-one. But I got to say that when I'm standing in front of 250 or 300 people and I'm delivering a message, the impact that I can make in an hour is so much greater when I speak versus when I work with people one-on-one. So there is something very exciting about that.
Yeah.
And that is a part of my business that I want to continue to grow. And I have a couple of hallmark speeches that I've done, and I want to be able to use them more and then maybe come up with like a third.
Yeah.
So these are my three that I talk about. And they all kind of, they're around similar topics. The way that I build a keynote speech is kind of like pods. If I have just all these pods and I just move them around and I say, oh, this one goes with this speech and this one goes over here and this one goes over here. And then I change the beginning and I change the ending and there's your keynote.
Right.
So that's kind of how I develop it. But it's very exciting because I know I have an impact with doing keynotes. And then I do think there's a book. But I'm not ready for that yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just got to keep talking to yourself until you can write the book. Yeah.
Yeah, it's processing. So the way that I am able to develop ideas is through writing. And that's why I spend so much time on LinkedIn, is because I use it almost as a little bit of as a blog or a diary.
Yeah.
And so that's where I kind of start my idea flow. And from that is where I get a lot of my ideas for my keynotes. And so it's this kind of writing funnel. And so I know that there's all this juicy information that I have, and that's going to be the content for the book. I just kind of have to put it together.
Right.
And I don't know a timeline for that. I haven't even really started working on it, but I think that's probably what's next.
So cool. So fun. Melissa, thank you so much for giving me your time, for letting me pick your brain.
Are we done? I feel like we could talk for so many
for hours and hours. Yeah. We have now teed up, episode 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. The partnership one is going to be fun.
Okay.
But I have a gift for you.
Oh.
So these are my Inspire by Example shirts.
Okay.
And I want you to have one.
Cool.
Because I want to thank you for the work that you're doing, because first of all, awesome. That matters. And you had talked about kind of the impact that you're able to make when you're presenting and speaking and things like that, which it is huge. It's so fun to see. But also your vulnerability and the way that you're able to tell the hard parts about your story, I think matter more than the good parts and the wins, because it gives everybody hope. We all know that, we've all struggled. We've all been in those places, and to see, what the other side of it looks like is incredibly inspiring.
Oh,
so that's why I want you to have an Inspired by Example shirt.
Yeah.
And I want you to know from me how much I appreciate you letting me pick your brain, being an example, giving us something to strive for, and just thank you. Keep doing what you're doing, because we need more of it.
Well, I'm so happy to be here. I love what you're doing too. And I think by sharing stories, it can lead to other people having aha moments and being inspired. And that's why I do what I do. That makes me feel so happy when I hear feedback like that. So thank you for having me. And if you're listening, certainly thank you for listening. Yeah. This has been really fun.
And thank you from me for listening.
Yeah. And I'm just around the corner, literally.
Literally.
Just around the corner.
Melissa, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.